What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Barely Qualified Picks. It is Super Bowl preview week, but we've got a lot more to talk about than that. We're also going to talk on some college football updates and maybe even poke at the NBA. And to do all of that, I've got my man Nate here. Nate, how are you doing?
Hey, man, what a time to be alive. We're back in the studio, which is really just my office, but we're going to talk, like you just said, a bunch of different topics today. Super Bowl's on the horizon. Let's get it on.
Well, you took a few more steps between the last time we met and this time. You went actually all the way abroad and then you came back. You have a great time in Switzerland?
It was incredible out there. The weather was fantastic, cold but not too cold. And just that was my first time, by the way, to Switzerland, and the beauty of the area, the greenery, just the frost, the way it sits up in the trees. It actually feels like you're in a movie.
It really does.
It was magical there. We did a few stops in Germany. Storms on the East Coast prevented us from going to France because we had to fly back a day early. But other than that, man, what a trip.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, well, you were gone. I was busy getting sick. It's gone around, and it destroyed me for a week. I got just healthy enough to go up to Seattle for the NFC Championship game, and then I yelled my ass off for 3 hours. You can hear I'm actually healthy again. Doesn't sound that way, but I am. And it was worth it because I'll tell you, we can talk about the Patriots and the Broncos in a second. I know that, and thank you, Nate, because you were overseas for this. So I know you've had to spend some extra time catching up on these two games. And I want to talk about both of them, but let's start with this Seahawks game because honestly, it felt in the stadium like the Super Bowl. I think there was a general sense, and of course I was surrounded by Seahawks fans, but a general sense that whichever team won, and it was a toss-up. I mean, there were a lot of really passionate Seahawks fans who were saying there's no way we lose. But every reasonable Seahawks fan that I talked to was like, man, I really hope we win, and I think we can, and I think we will. But that Rams team is really good. And whichever one of us gets through is probably going to win the Super Bowl, which is kind of a funny feeling as you're watching that game. And I felt it build throughout the game. And then sure enough, Sam Darnold and the Seahawks get it done, despite some big mistakes both ways.
Yeah.
To earn a ticket to the Super Bowl.
But how about that weather?
In Seattle, the weather was great. In Denver, not so much.
That's what I'm saying. In Seattle, to be in January and to get a game inside of Lumen Field, right, to be that nice, that was incredible. Number one, I think that played a huge advantage, more so to the Rams than anything. You come in with a clean weather slate. Matt Stafford gets to throw the rock around without too much interference. But again, what a game. Special teams kind of screwed some people over, and I think that tends to be.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I think the first thing that comes to mind is the two muffed punts for the Rams. They got back on one of them. The second one they didn't get back on. But they weren't just muffed punts. You have to give a lot of credit to Michael Dixon because he actually caused those in the way that he kicked the ball. And it's funny, when I was in the stadium and he was kicking the ball and it was turning over the way that it was, a couple of times I was like, whoa, that's a bad kick. And then it would turn out really well. And I was like, what am I watching here? Is it just I haven't been to a game in a while? But then sure enough, we're stuck in traffic on the way home, 710 Cairo, ESPN Seattle radio, which is, we don't get sports radio in Bend. They're talking about the game afterwards, and they're talking about those punts and how Michael Dixon's strategy with those punts caused the muffs, which, I mean, you don't see that very often.
Yeah, what's interesting about those punts is typically in the NFL, you want that ball kind of spiraling and then the nose turns over and it comes down and it's nice to catch. But when you have a ball that's toppling and then it gets a little bit of a knuckle because of the wind, now you're sitting there and you're looking up at the ball and you're not quite sure if you're exactly underneath it or not, or if you have to step to the left or the right or forward. And then again, it's not coming down nicely, it's toppling. So now it hits your shoulder pads, it can clip the bottom of your helmet. Just so many things can go wrong when a ball is punted that way. I guess credit to Michael Dixon for, executing those punts the way he did. But at the end of the day, you get paid a lot of money to get back there and catch that football.
And alert special teams. I mean, that's the other side of it is Seattle's had one of the best special teams units in the league this year. The Rams, it's the one weakness that they've had the worst. And they're not the worst, but it's, the worst unit on their team. And it bit them here.
Yeah, it bit them big time. I think the biggest thing was the Seattle offense staying ahead of the chains. the entire game. There wasn't a lot of times where the Seattle offense with Sam Darnold was looking at a lot of big third and longs, and I thought that was massive, especially for Sam Darnold. Typically, I guess I shouldn't even say typically, but what we've seen from Sam Darnold in some of these bigger games is he gets a little bit gun shy, a little bit unsure. He starts kind of looking but not really seeing. It
That's
can be
a really
prone
good
to
point. And credit to the offensive line. They kept his ass clean.
right. And so for him to play as well as he did and as clean as he did, I thought that was impressive for Sam Darnold. And I think it was ultimately the difference in the game. Like, yes, obviously special teams, those plays absolutely changed the momentum and the swinging of the game. But without Sam Darnold, I mean, even without that, the Rams played an incredible game of football. Matt Stafford was on fire. And if Sam Darnold did not match that tit for tat, I think it would have been an ugly game.
Now, the flip side of that is if Tariq Woolen doesn't get a second taunting penalty for basically running into the Rams bench and, giving them the what for, the Rams don't get that touchdown to Puka on the next play that narrows the score from 31-20 to 31-27. And then it's a different game. Man, it was frustrating for Reek to do that. And if we would have lost the game as a result of that, I mean, obviously it wouldn't have been because of that, because that happened earlier in the game and there was a lot of game left to be played afterwards. But if that had been a key factor in losing the game, that would have been really tough. The thing that I'll say is I'd still stomach it either way because I want the defense to play with that kind of fire. Generally, they're not going to throw those taunting flags in the playoffs, but if you're playing with that level of intensity, I mean, I'm still surprised that he didn't get the pick. And if he had gotten the pick and then taunted, we wouldn't even be talking about it because it would have been Seahawks ball.
Right, right. And like you said, that chip on the shoulder, that intensity, it's what you want to see more so from your defense and your offense. And it kind of is strange how that happens. As a defensive player, you're allowed to have that, but as an offensive player, it looks like you lost your head, right?
Yeah.
Like DK Metcalf versus what Tariq Woolen did, right? I think DK Metcalf, can kind of be a different case at times, but just it goes to show you that edge that you have to play with on defense. And again, Mike McDonald doesn't love the lack of discipline, but he loves that maximum intensity being shown by his team.
And it raises the bar for everybody else. And I got to say, one other guy that was a bar raiser for the Seahawks, and if you look just at the box score, if you missed the game and you looked at the box score, you would see that Kenny Walker had 19 carries for 62 yards.
He looked disgusting.
I mean, early in the game, he was churning hard. And the big thing for me was it was one of those games where he would get hit after a yard and he would turn it into a 3-yard gain. And he was always falling forward. And frankly, he didn't have a lot of help behind him. Because with no Zach Charbonnet, and there was a lot of debate among Seahawk fans going into this game, could it actually be a Ewing theory with Zach Charbonnet where, not having him as a boon because Kenny Walker can get into a better rhythm and then he's going to actually, churn more yards out late. Well, it didn't really turn out that way because they gave all of Zach Charbonnet's touches to George Holani, who looked great in the preseason. But I remember thinking in the preseason, well, geez, if George Holani's playing for us this season, we're screwed. And so sure enough, George Holani's in the NFC Championship game. And credit to him, he actually had one big catch that converted a third down that kept the drive moving that ended in points. But really, I got to give all the credit to Kenny Walker because that was an amazing performance. He's got to do it again against the Patriots. He has had an injury history. He's healthy right now. He's going to have to tote the rock as many times as they need to. He's got to take half of those carries that they gave to George Holani on his own shoulders and go win the Super Bowl. It's going to be critical that he does that and take some of the pressure off the man, the offensive player of the year, the dude who stepped up. And even though his yardage wasn't as high as Puka, because Puka had 46 yards on those last 20 seconds of passes, JSN showed out in this game. And the Seahawks won because you could say because of Sam Darnold, and he got him the ball. But JSN did what he does, where he just has this. It's like when you're watching basketball, you're in the arena, and you look up at the board, and you're like, whoa, he has 30? That was a quiet 30. That was a quiet 10-153 and a tutty for Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, he's just special. And real quick, what we had talked about kind of earlier this week was this actually the Super Bowl matchup? And I'm not sure if you wanted to quite go in that direction yet, but it kind of felt like that. Like you're saying, if you're in the stadium and you're feeling that kind of intensity, I mean, that's what you expect to see. Game-changing plays that are happening on both sides of the football. Your elite players playing at an elite level at all points in the game. Like, that's how it ends up being quiet. It's not, oh my goodness, he had, a 3-drive stretch where he just was catching everything and had a 70-yard bomb and then a 30-yard bomb. It was just, he just kept killing you.
Yeah, he did.
Start to finish in the game.
And
And those are the games where, you look up and you're like, damn, he killed us the entire game. And just, he's so special. His ability to get open against man, to find the soft spots against zone, his ability after the catch. He's just such an unbelievable athlete. Makes him almost impossible to defend. And I honestly thought the Rams would have had a better game plan to kind of bottle him up and say, hey, everybody else has to beat us, but Jackson, you're not going to beat us.
Yeah.
And we didn't see even an attempt at making that happen.
Well, I mean, you look at the game differently than I do. It felt in the stadium like they were chasing him as best as they could. They just couldn't catch him fast. And, I will say, credit to him. He is in a long line of highly heralded first-round pick Ohio State wide receivers. And for all the guys that have come through, the Chris Olaves and the Marvin Harrisons and the Garrett Wilsons, he is the first to make the Super Bowl. He, among all of them, was the least heralded coming out, even after putting up like 300 and some yards in his last bowl game. But man, he has proven to be a true wide receiver one. At the start of this year, there were questions, with DK Metcalf leaving. Oh, now they're relying on Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's really just a wide receiver two. Buddy. He's a wide receiver one. And I respect Puka. I'm not going to say he's better than Puka, but those two guys that we saw in that game are the two best receivers in the league right now. And it's not close.
Yeah, I'll push back against that, like him being the first one to reach the Super Bowl. I think that's real cool. But but the first, couple of years, he's suffering through Ryan Grubb and Shane Waldron, right? And you go to Garrett Wilson's situation with the Jets. That's abysmal, both quarterback and coaching situation. Marvin Harrison Jr., right? A little bit of injury plus Kyler Murray, not incredibly consistent. Chris Olave.
I mean, he's playing with Sam Darnold at the beginning of the year. What would people have said?
But Sam Darnold was feeding Justin Jefferson.
True.
Right? So there's an ability to throw the ball to an elite wide receiver.
Yeah.
You get Clint Kubiak. Again, I like what you're saying, and I love Jackson Smith-Njigba as just as much as the next guy, but teetering to the Ohio State thing, I mean, it's just a victim of situations.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I'm just saying, among all of those guys who came out so heralded, he was the least of them. And now he's having the most career success. But it's a team game. Completely agree. Completely.
Yeah, he's special. Both him and Puka. I'm not even sure where we were going, but man, what an excellent player he is. Like you said, with Kenneth Walker, he's going to be critical in the Super Bowl. Again, he's going to have to take on a little bit more of those carries and be a threat in the passing game as well. I don't think we've seen him in the passing game, a little bit in the screen game this year, but he's going to have to find a way to get yards without just, taking the handoff. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the AFC Championship game where the Broncos had to start Jarrett Stidham. Obviously, Bo Nix, breaking his ankle in the divisional round. And that news comes out right after the divisional game is over. You can't really see in the game where that happened. Losing Bo Nix was a huge hit. And I give all the credit in the world to the Broncos for telling themselves, for telling their fans, for telling the world that they were going to be just fine with Jarrett Stidham. But the dude hadn't thrown a pass in a live game that wasn't a preseason game in 3 years. And playing in the AFC Championship with that kind of pressure without superstars around him. RJ Harvey is his best running back. He's okay. He's a good running back. He's okay. He's young. When your receivers are Cortland Sutton is your best receiver, and Troy Franklin didn't even play in the game because he was still out. It was just tough, right? He didn't have a lot of weapons around him, and you saw that early. He hit that one big pass to Cortland Sutton, made another nice throw into the end zone to get those first 7 points, and then it was a goose egg the rest of the way. I felt for Denver. I didn't really feel like New England won that game so much as Denver wasn't capable of winning that game. And that kind of sucks. And then there was the snow side of it. Once the snow rolled in, the game changed. And it's like in Madden, I love a snow game. In real life, I don't want to be at one in person. That's cold and that's distracting. And I certainly don't love it for the players and for the outcome on the field. I want games like the game that was played in Seattle. And I'm not saying everybody should go to a dome because I love a good outdoors game. And I accept that a snow game is going to happen from time to time as a result. But it's tough when you have the snow roll in like that and they can't even see where they're going.
And it wasn't even a little bit of snow. It was a lot of bit of snow, completely covering the lines. It true to me changed the outcome of the game. I think Denver has a better chance of winning that game in the second half. Jarrett Stidham gets to go into halftime, kind of collect himself, be like, "Whew, okay, this is what Vrabel's throwing at us. What do we do in the second half?" But in that second half, when it just becomes mush, I mean, there's really not much you can do. It's just really hard to put a spin on this game again, knowing that Bo Nix was out. And I think that with Bo Nix being out, that was the factor, not just because, oh, he's your starting quarterback, just your legs. In
Yeah.
that second half of the game, we saw Drake May have several big runs, whether that was for the touchdown or that key third down late in the game. Bo Nix is doing the same thing with his legs. He's a dynamic quarterback with his legs, running the football. Sean Payton not just allows him to scramble, but has a number of designed runs for
Right.
Bo Nix. So I think that would have completely changed the nature of the game, whether that's extending drives or whether that's just being creative in and of its own. And that makes it so hard. And I know that there's a lot of talk about Sean Payton and there, some questionable play calling, and then you've got the field goal situation. But when you're calling a game for your backup quarterback and he's not throwing it well, and then again, you bring in the weather factor, what are you supposed to call? Like, people think it's just
I don't
real
fault
easy.
Peyton at all.
People think it's so easy sitting on the couch and be like, oh, well, obviously you should have done. I'm like, you guys got no idea what the game plan is, what the preparation's looking like. Sean Payton, again, a great play caller in the sense of calling a game. He doesn't just call what's on his sheet. He calls what's necessary to win.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is
so
why you're
again,
a Super Bowl winning coach.
exactly. And so it's just hard for me to blame those things. The missed field goal, I think, is an issue, but I mean, again, what can you do?
Agree. Agree. And you know what? Look, the Patriots did enough. They moved on. And now they get to take on the Seahawks, fly all the way across the country to Santa Clara. My first question for you is, do you think the Seahawks have at least a slight inherent advantage because they go play in that stadium every single year? A lot of these guys have played a ton of games in Levi's. They know the surroundings. They know the sight lines, all of that. I should have looked up the last time the Patriots played in Santa Clara. May not even have been that long ago, but look, Drake May hasn't been there yet, I don't believe. And so does that matter at all?
It certainly does. Comfortability of just being in the stadium. You got the locker room, you know where the bus drops you off, where you walk in, where you walk out of the tunnel. Those kind of little things can make a big difference. I think the bigger difference is just the travel, right? If you're the Seahawks, you get to stay on the West Coast versus you're
Yeah.
coming all the way from Boston or Foxborough or whatever you want to say that is. That's a long travel trip. And I know that they're professionals. They're going to get there and have plenty of time to get acclimated. But still, having just experienced a significant time change, like, it's hard to stay locked in and stay focused. It's likely going to be a pretty wet game, which I don't think, you know, really benefits anybody. But still, if there's an advantage to be had, it's being on the West Coast for the Seahawks and just a little bit of familiarity with the area.
I agree. Now, previewing the game a little bit, I think when you look at the Patriots having the ball, on the one hand, Drake May and this offense has faced three very good defenses in a row getting to this point. You can talk about Jared Stidham, but the Denver defense was flying around and they scored enough points to win. Against Houston, they put up 28 points on the Houston defense. Well, I guess 21 points, and then their defense got a pick six, if I recall correctly. And then, of course, they beat the Chargers 16-3, and the Chargers have a very good defense. Now, I'm not going to say that the Seahawks defense is better than the Texans, but I think they're on par with the Texans. And when you flip the lens and you look at the Patriots offense from the Seahawks defense point of view, Drake May is like a poor man's Matt Stafford. Stephon Diggs is like a homeless man's Puka Nakua. Kayshawn Boutte, I mean, I can't even compare him to Devontae Adams. I would say the running game is about equal. Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson against Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. And then, of course, the Rams have a much better collection of tight ends. Hunter Henry is a very good tight end, but he is one tight end. The Rams come at you with three tight ends in Parkinson and Ferguson, Go Ducks, and Higbee, who can all run wide receiver routes. And that's how they get a lot of people, because you come out in a lighter package and then they come out in their 13, and then they can spread out and do all kinds of things. The Patriots aren't going to do that. And I think, for the Seahawks, after seeing what the Seahawks have seen in the Rams offense and the Niners offense twice in a row, I think the Seahawks defense has an advantage here. If you just think about how this Patriots offense stacks up again against a team like the Rams, who we just saw.
Yeah, I think you factor in roster and you look at it on paper. Sure, maybe the Patriots offense isn't anything to write home about, or there's not a player on that offense that absolutely terrifies you. Travion Henderson does have home run speed, so if you let him slip through a hole, he could take one on you. But I think the biggest thing is going to be the coaching side of things. What is Josh McDaniels going to dial up? He is a Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator. He's done it with the Patriots, with Vrabel kind of in the building, and I think what's going to be interesting is what we see from Drake May versus what we saw from some Tom Brady. Right? Like a lot of those Super Bowl winning teams for Tom Brady, it wasn't the Randy Moss scoring 50 points a game, right? It was dink and dunk.
Tom Brady.
Right. It was right.
And a great defense.
Right. But it was dink and dunk. It was move the football, take what the defense is giving you, which is exactly what they've done. Now, again, the defense has stepped up for New England. I don't think the offenses have been particularly great. Denver, obviously not an offense to write home about. Houston Texans, CJ Stroud really, really struggling. And then whatever was left of the Chargers, that game still blows my mind. Again, but I think that the game that is called by McDaniels is going to be the bigger indicator than it's going to be a performance of any one of the players. Because Mike McDonald's going to mix things up on defense. He's going to play with a high level of intensity, get the guys penetrating, and then force interceptions. But Drake May's done a great job of not throwing interceptions. He's mature enough to recognize blitzes, and I think that he's going to be set up to get the ball out quickly and try and frustrate and get those Seahawks guys on that back end to gamble and then hit you with something.
Do you know how many times the Seahawks got to Matt Stafford and sacked him on Sunday?
How many times?
One time. And do you know that was the first time they sacked him in the last 2 years?
Wow. Stafford gets the ball out.
Do you know who the most sacked quarterback in the NFL playoffs is?
I'm going to guess it's Drake May.
Drake May. He has 15 sacks. Do you want to guess the quarterback who has the next most sacks, how many he has?
I'm going to guess he's got less than 10.
6.
6.
You want to guess who had the fourth most sacks in the NFL this regular season? Drake May with 47. That, I think, is going to be a factor here because the Seahawks had this season the best track record of getting pressure with 4 guys. They rushed 80% of the time, and they got pressure 60% of the time. And that is scary. Now, the Rams were able to handle that. They know those schemes, and they've protected Matt Stafford really, really well. But the Seahawks got to the quarterback a lot this year. And the reason for that was because they can get so much pressure without sending extra guys and leaving them in coverage and running that nickel defense that dime defense that's really a nickel defense because of Nick Emenwari. So right. I just think that's really interesting, and I think that works in the Seahawks' favor. Again, the Patriots defense is good. They have some really good players on that defense. I don't think it will be easy for Sam Darnold, for Kenny Walker, for Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I don't think Christian Gonzalez is going to take him out of the game either. You look at a couple games ago when Christian Gonzalez came back from that concussion, he had 9 tackles because he was targeted 15 times, and he had 9 tackles because guys were catching the ball. Now, he limited damage, but that's not a Darrelle Revis shutdown corner. I'm sorry. That is not a Derek Stingley performance. I'm not worried about Christian Gonzalez. I'm really not worried about anybody on the New England defense. And I think Seattle is going to get theirs, and it's a 4.5 point spread. I'm not going to bet the game. But right now,
not going to bet the game. Your heart can't take it.
I don't think my heart can take it, right? And so I think I'm leaning Seattle right now. But 4.5 points in the Super Bowl is a lot. It's going to be a competitive game. There's going to be a lot of nerves, and it's going to be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think this New England defense is kind of a mirror of their offense in it that there's not a guy that you're like, oh my gosh, I am absolutely terrified of. I will say Christian Gonzalez is up there though. Again, he's probably not going to take out Jackson Smith and Jigba just because he lines up in the slot, he lines up outside, and Kubiak does so much to get him the best possible matchup. You could, unless they plan to have Christian Gonzalez absolutely mirror him, I don't see him being able to take him out of the game in and of its entirety. But I think that Vrabel does such a great job of mixing up the looks. Are you going to be in a base 3-4? Is it actually four down? Who's rushing? Who's not? Sam Darnold, I keep going back to that, I'm seeing ghosts clip. Is that Super Bowl pressure? And if Vrabel can mix things up just enough defensively, every guy does their 111th like he preaches. They play with their intensity, this, that, and the other. Like, can they get him a little bit out of rhythm? And
Yeah.
that's what I think is going to potentially change the game. That Seattle offense, like we talked about, is going to have to be able to run the football. Patriots love penetration on defense, like a traditional 3-4. Guys kind of sit back and squat, and they want to be able to read and react on the defensive line. But Vrabel somehow plays this strange, like, we actually penetrate out of this. So it is a different looking and different feeling defense than probably Seattle has seen most of the year. And I was trying to think of teams that they've played throughout the year that have something similar to setup. It's going to be unique, and it's going to be really interesting to see. I'm just really excited for this matchup. Like, I don't know if 4.5 points is a lot per se, just because, again, I think, top to bottom, Seattle is going to be better on both offense and defense, but it's going to be a game. There's a lot of championship pedigree on that Patriots side, and I just don't think you can discount that.
I agree. All right. Hey, before we move on to college football, I want to talk about the NFL coaching hires. And here's what I want to do. I want to run through a handful of the hires that have been made. I'll just mention the coach that's incoming, the coach that left, and I want you to give it a grade. Old school, let's, be the professor. Let's give them a grade on how they did. Let's start with the Atlanta Falcons. We'll just go through this alphabetically. The Falcons fired Raheem Morris. We talked about throughout the year that was probably going to happen. Of course, Raheem Morris leads the Falcons on a late surge. They actually tie to get a share of the NFC South title, but then lose out on tiebreakers. Raheem Morris is out. Kevin Stefanski, former Browns coach, is in. What do you think of the Kevin Stefanski hire?
I think that's a B+ hire. I have my gripes with Kevin Stefanski as a head coach, but I think throughout all of the chaos with the Cleveland Browns, those first couple years with Baker, I think he put a great team together. The defense was great with Schwartz, and I think what he's going to be able to bring is some actual offensive consistency that's going to be able to take advantage of the massive amount of weapons that they have on that side of the football. You can think of Kyle Pitts as kind of your David Njoku, not necessarily one-to-one. Your Bijan Robinson as your Nick Chubb. Tyler Algier is probably going to go seek some money elsewhere, so you'll truly have a one featured back. You've got Drake London, who can be your wide receiver one. You've got who's the slot wide receiver, the real quick cat. Oh my goodness.
Ooh.
Oh my goodness. Can't remember.
Mooney?
But, yes, Darnell Mooney, that's the name. So there's a lot there for them to be able to play with, and so I like the hire. I just have beef with Kevin Stefanski. I think his offense is very run my play, and sometimes my plays aren't great. But, he's got that continuity with Kirk Cousins. So maybe things will work out. I don't know.
Yeah, I give it a solid B. I like the offensive hire. We both thought that that's what they needed to go do. I believe I saw that he's retaining the defensive coordinator, which I think is a good thing. They had one of the best pass rushes and one of the best secondaries in the league. If they can shore up their linebacker position and do a bit better on the run defense side of things, they can definitely compete. They have the firepower. So I give it a B, and let's see how it goes.
Yep.
All right. B is for Baltimore. And the Baltimore Ravens fired John Harbaugh, which, on the one hand is kind of shocking after 18 seasons. But on the other hand, every job is a season. I don't care who you are. And every season comes to a close. I think it's time for them to freshen up. And in comes Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. What do you think of that hire?
I think that's an F.
Oh,
maybe I'll give it a D. I like Jesse Minter. I think he's a great defensive coordinator. Baltimore, even though John Harbaugh is a special teams guy, they've had a defensive culture, throughout his time there. And I love that they want to have that continuity. But I just feel like unless they make an incredibly intelligent offensive coordinator hire, you're going to have the same woes and problems. You're going to have a great defense historically, typically, right? You've got a lot of different tools and weapons on that defensive side of the football. That's where they spend most of their money. But Lamar Jackson seems to be missing something. for all of his greatness and all of his wonder and all his ability to make incredible plays, there's something that just hasn't clicked there for him, and it's that game management football. And I feel like they just needed somebody who could help harness that. I don't have the answer as to who that was, but a kind of younger defensive coordinator with mentor probably isn't the choice I would have made.
So I was a C on this, and I was probably a C on this because of a little bit of relativity and what the Pittsburgh Steelers did. I at least liked that Baltimore went after a young up and coming coordinator as opposed to going for a retread head coach. So we'll talk about the Steelers in a minute, but I was a C on this one. I hear what you're saying though, and they gave him a 5-year contract. I would not be surprised if he does not fulfill all 5 years of that contract before they move on.
I would not doubt that either. And who knows? Maybe this is a Mike McDonald in the waiting, a guy who can turn the culture around and knows how to build a staff around himself. We'll see. But
will.
yeah, the maturity that's needed for that Baltimore Ravens head coaching position, given who just left, it's hard to follow a guy like John Harbaugh. So best of luck to him. I don't think it was the right fit for a hire.
Yeah. All right. Staying in the B's, we've got the Buffalo Bills. And right after Josh Allen and the Bills lost in the playoffs, we found out that Sean McDermott was fired. That was a little bit surprising to me. I've thought this wasn't the Bills' best year defensively. Certainly there have been some really tragic losses for the Bills in the playoffs. Josh put the team on his shoulders. I wasn't really sure that the receiving room, which was the biggest problem for the Bills this year, was a Sean McDermott problem, but he's the one that took the fall. He's out, and offensive coordinator Joe Brady is promoted to head coach. Very curious how you grade this hire.
This to me is a C hire only for continuity. This could have easily been a D or an F. Joe Brady, I think, is one of the great offensive coordinators in the sense of, and this is my favorite thing about offensive coordinators. Can you call a game, not just call plays on your sheets? He can run it 50 times or he can throw it 50 times. It depends on what the offense needs. But the issue is the accountability for Josh Allen, which nobody, it seems, was able to provide. Whether that was Joe Brady, whether that was Sean McDermott, it didn't matter. Josh Allen, for all of his greatness and wonder, hasn't yet figured out how to take care of the football on the biggest stage, right? Like you're scrambling, you have a great run, tuck the football. Don't let somebody poke that out. Or maybe don't lower your shoulder for that third down in the first quarter. Or, hey, maybe we don't need to score in 25 seconds here. Let's get our defense a break and let's have a 5, 6, 7-minute drive here. We've got a great run game. Let's keep it on the ground. Let's stop checking out of those run plays. And so I like Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator and the offensive mind. I just worry about the accountability of Josh Allen being pushed to grow another level. Because at a certain point, you can't keep looking at the Sean McDermott defense giving up 30-some-odd points. It's how do you play complementary offense to keep your defense off the field and flip the field. Stop having bad turnovers that put your defense in bad situations.
Well, my thing is, now that he's a head coach, he's got to make a decision. Does he go hire another offensive coordinator and hand them the reins and, cultivate the next level of talent at that offensive coordinator position, knowing that there's a chance that that person fails? They're going to have little failures, but there's a chance that they could big fail. Or do you hold on to the play calling? And then in that case, your offensive coordinator has something less than a full offensive coordinator job, and you're doing a lot more work. And then that's going to make it hard for you to focus on all the other things under your purview as head coach. For me, it feels like they either should have made a full change at head coach and not just promoted Brady, or they should have run it back for another year and focused on getting Josh Allen some help.
Yeah, it's hard to get Josh Allen help when you've got a defensive-minded head coach who wants to spend his money on defense, and Josh Allen is getting paid $90 billion a year. That's taken up almost all your cap. It's really hard to go get an elite wide receiver one. You had to go draft one. They took that swing on Keon Coleman. It didn't end up working out, and I think that kind of screwed Sean McDermott.
Yeah.
So and that's a tough way to go. And I think Sean McDermott, though, I think his time was up. Much like Harbaugh, throw it all the way back to Andy Reid with the Eagles. You can have a lot of success, but if you don't ultimately get over the hump, and it's not showing any signs of looking different, then I think it's time to go. Because I think if you would have run it back, you would have been in the same situation. Didn't win his game, didn't win as many games as you probably should have, lost some games that you definitely should have, and, lose in the biggest moment.
Yeah. Fair.
We would have just seen the same thing.
Well, I think fans in Buffalo are probably a little wait and see on that, but I can tell you the fans in Cleveland have to be sad, sad, sad. And they're always sad, sad, sad. I can't decide if Cleveland hiring 60-year-old former Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken is an F because it's Todd Monken, or if it's an A because they got a human being who is living and breathing to say yes to this job. Which is it for you?
Man, this is an A+ hire. I love the. I couldn't even say that with a straight face. You got somebody in the building. It's just so strange how they went about it. It looked like Schwartz was going to be the guy, and this was true, I think, also for the Buffalo Bills. Like, why were they dancing so long with their coordinators? Like, why was Joe Brady not hired instantaneously? I know you wanted to go through other head coaching candidates.
Yeah, it makes it seem like you let Tom McDermott go and you didn't even know what you were going to do.
That was weird to me. But bringing it back to the Browns, like, yeah, you got somebody in the door, Todd Monken. I don't know what his credentials look like in terms of his ability to be a head coach, but if Deshaun Watson, who's going to be on the roster, and is, unless you want to cut him, right, which I think it would be like $60 million right now, or if you cut him after June, but either way, still next year you owe him like another $60 million, something ridiculous like that. Maybe there's some Lamar Jackson-esque, juice left to squeeze out of Deshaun Watson, and he can get that out of him. I've got no idea.
Was that a pun intended or not a pun intended?
Man, I really didn't mean to let it go like that. I did not. Wow.
We went there.
This
all
was getting
good.
deeper.
Yeah,
it just didn't really seem like they had a plan. It felt like they were a little bit later than they should have been on moving on from Stefanski, or at least parting ways. And I just think that they're in a mess of their own making, right? Because of poor decisions made in that front office has led to people looking at that job as a candidate and being like, why would I touch that? It's career suicide to take this job. But so you keep going down the list, and it's all you got.
But you do have a Pro Bowl quarterback in Shedeur Sanders.
You do have a Pro Bowl quarterback.
The craziest thing since I think Tyler Huntley was a Pro Bowl replacement in 2022 for playing 4 games as a fill-in starter and not very well because guys kept bagging out. I thought that was ridiculous. But hey, at least Todd Monken has a Pro Bowl quarterback.
But you're about to watch your defensive MVP probably walk out the door or force his way out.
Probably, yeah, and he should. Miles, please get yourself out of there, bro. You only have so many years left, and they should be used for good, not for evil. All right, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. This is an interesting one to me, and I'm very curious to know how you're going to grade this. They hired Jeff Hafley, who, I've never met the guy, but all word around the league was that he's a very inspirational coach. He was beloved by his players. When the Packers had the best player in maybe the league in Micah Parsons, their defense was very, very good. When the Packers didn't have the best player in the league in Micah Parsons, their defense was good but not great. How do you feel about this hire?
I think it's a solid B hire. Mm-hmm. What I like,
great.
He's a classic leader of men guy. I think Hafley is going to be one of the coaches that needs to surround himself with head coach quality coordinators. We talked about this with Sirianni and why I can't stand Sirianni, but he somehow manages to get some good staffs around him once every other year once the coordinators leave. But that's what Hafley, to me, is going to need to do. He's great behind the mic. He's great on the podium. He knows how to get guys going in the same direction, but is he going to surround himself with the right staff? And you could argue that for really any head coach, but I think more so for Hafley, you're walking into a situation where you've got an expensive quarterback that people are kind of out on, who's a little bit injury ridden. You're moving on to a defense that is not quite rid of all of the old talent that they've had. They've kind of tried to reskin that defense the past couple of years. So what are you going to do on defense? Are you going to retain Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator? Like, there's just a lot of things kind of in the mix. And for him, probably more so than any of the head coaches hired this year, is he going to put a staff around him that's going to be able to take advantage of the offensive weapons that they do have, but then get the defense healthy, number one, and firing on all cylinders.
I agree with that. And I hope he does retain the DC down there, because I think, we saw a shift in the Dolphins from being a high flying, wide open offense that was going to put a lot of pressure on their defense, just the way that they played stylistically, to a power running game, kind of defense first team. Made sense that they brought in a guy like this to me. Now, is he going to be the right guy? Don't know. But again, I like the up and coming coordinator hire as opposed to a retread in Miami. And, to your point, it's going to depend on his cabinet, and he's got a lot of sun to offer and no state income tax. So I would think that he will be able to find some good coaching talent to put around himself.
Agreed.
All right. Now, John Harbaugh was fired by the Ravens, and then he went and took the seat that was vacated by Brian Daboll in New York. John Harbaugh, coach of the New York Giants. What do you think?
C+.
Oh,
I like John Harbaugh. I think he's going to do a great job of cleaning up the culture that's currently residing in the Giants. Things are messy, they're chaotic. It's New York. That's kind of how those things go. And he's going to be one of the mature head coaches to come in and say, "Hey, we're going to block out the noise. We're going to focus on us," and all those other cliche things that you could say as an NFL head coach. He's got maybe a good quarterback with Jackson Dart, depending on how he comes back from the ankle injury. I think you technically still have Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston on the roster, so I'm not entirely sure what you're doing there. But the biggest thing is John Harbaugh, as great as he is, and I don't even know if he's technically great as a special teams coordinator. What are things going to look like on that offensive side of the football to support Jackson Dart? And then the defense, there's a lot of talent on that defense. Are you going to be able to maximize that defense? And the reason why I think it's such a C higher is it's not that you necessarily needed to get, this is like the hire before you make the hire to get to the Super Bowl. John Harbaugh is going to fix your team for like 5 years, and then you're going to hire the guy that's going to take you to the next level. That's how I see it.
It's interesting you say that, because I've thought that about coaches, for a long time, that most coaches can either get you from 0 to 1, from 1 to 10, or from 10 to 100. But there are very few that can accomplish multiple of those phases. And I actually gave this a B+, because I think John Harbaugh is the type of coach with the type of experience and relationships around the league to hire a staff that will be able to take this talent from 0 to 10. And I don't know if he can still win a championship as a coach. That's hard. You got to be on your P's and Q's. I think even you look at Sean McVay, and he's talked about, how hard it is to hold on to that edge. But I like this for them. And I think I put a lot more stock into having him in the room as an adult. And I think it's very unlikely that they would let him go. They've had a short fuse in New York. And the one thing about the NFL is you can go from really good to struggling in 1 year. And sometimes it's just a matter of injuries. I mean, Brian Daboll won a division championship. He played in the playoffs, or he took a team to the playoffs. I think they're going to give John Harbaugh time. And I think that time is going to be very valuable with the team that, at least on offense, is very young, with Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo and Malik Neighbors.
I think the time is a misnomer, because Daboll got credit for that first year in the playoffs. I think that division was kind of not great that year, and then you run into a Cowboys team that doesn't even know how to play defense, plus Dak Prescott's inability to show up in the playoffs. So you have that happen in the first year. Daniel Jones gets figured out, and you get 2 years with him, injury-ridden, this, that, and the other. Like, a lot of things happen for Daboll to be able to go to that front office and say, "Hey, it's not me. There's just some stuff going on. I need some more support. I need this, that, and the other." I don't think John Harbaugh is going to get that same leash, because if you look at the past history of coaches, whether that was Joe Judge, I know I'm missing somebody in between there, but there hasn't necessarily been a long leash. And so I don't want people to think that there's going to be a long leash just because Daboll's kind of got extended, because he had that playoff win and he had a lot of chaos surrounding that quarterback position. So I don't know.
All right. Well, I'm going to stick with my B+. I hear you, haven't been completely moved. I'm going to be interested to see if you agree, and if you don't, if you can move me on the next one, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers hiring Mike McCarthy. I don't understand this at all. This is very anti-Steelers. Like, they generally have gone and hired young guys. Totally get why they forced Mike Tomlin to step down, and let's all be honest, they forced Mike Tomlin to step down. But this just felt like a punt to me. Like, they didn't really want to make the decision now, and so they're going to punt this a couple of years. I can't see Mike McCarthy sticking around much longer than that. It's not like he's going to build a culture in that time. It's not like the Steelers didn't have culture. So I really didn't understand this at all. I give it a big fat freaking F.
Yeah, I'm going to give this a C, and the C is for confused. I've got no idea what the plan is. And also, did Aaron Rodgers approve this hire? Those are my two bits. The offense is going to be great next year. That's one thing you can count on. Say what you want about Mike McCarthy, but that Dallas offense when he was there was electric. He knows how to get the quarterback throwing the rock around the field.
What was the first thing that he did? He got rid of the offensive terrorist, Arthur Smith. And did you see where Arthur Smith landed?
Isn't that when he went to Tennessee?
No, Arthur Smith landed at Ohio State. He took over the offensive coordinator role for the Buckeyes. So you might want to short the Buckeyes next year, or at least take the under on the point.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Wait, wasn't Arthur Smith, he was with the Cowboys this year?
No, he was with the Steelers.
Oh, Steelers. Oh, my gosh. Sorry. I went so many. I thought you were talking about what's the first thing he did when he got to the Cowboy. I don't know what I was thinking when you said
I'm talking about the first thing that Mike McCarthy did when he got to Pittsburgh is he let Arthur Smith go. Arthur Smith then turns around and lands in Ohio State, which will be interesting.
Yeah, short Ohio State. That's insane.
Know,
okay. That's so good to know. Man,
all right, last coaching job that got filled, and it's my A hire. Robert Saleh going to the Tennessee Titans. Look, Tennessee has work to do on the roster. They have work to do in terms of moving up in that division. But I think Robert Saleh is a good coach. I don't hold the Jets campaign against him. And I think his guys are going to be really fired up to play for him. And he's going to a situation with a young quarterback. Not a great running game in Tony Pollard and company, but running games turn over quickly. If they can go get, A.J. Brown used to be in Tennessee. You can go find another number one wide receiver, and if they can go find that guy, that could be a really competitive team next year.
I love the Bobby Saleh hire. To me, he's one of the great coordinators. But to me, and if the word on the street is correct, Brian Daboll is going to be the offensive coordinator. It's what DeMeco Ryans needs to do ASAP in Houston is get an offensive mind in the building so you don't have to think twice about what's going on the other side of the football. Robert Saleh said in his presser that he wants to call plays on defense again. He doesn't want to feel like he's the best paid spectator or the highest paid spectator on the field. So he wants to have absolute control over this team. Daboll is a guy who kind of coached the recklessness out of Josh Allen and kind of tighten some things up for him. If he can do that for Cam Ward, like you said, get a few more offensive pieces around defense, despite lack of talent, they'll be playing at a higher level next year no matter what. Things could turn around a lot quicker and maybe be a team like who was it a couple years ago, like Washington. You bring in a defensive guy, you've got a nice young quarterback, and, things can kind of turn around pretty quick.
They can, and I'll say, like, as somebody who has, like him, moved up a ladder. Sometimes the first time around, you don't get everything right. And then when you get a second shot and you get to apply all those learnings that you cultivated from your first round in the rodeo, you can do a lot better the second time around. So I've got a lot of optimism and hope for Robert Saleh and what he can do in Tennessee.
Whatever the win total is, I'm betting the over.
All right. Okay, let's talk about college football. So, obviously the season is over. Indiana won. Congratulations. That was incredible. I think a historic season. There's been a lot going on. The management committee for the playoffs met, and there was a lot of discussion about a 16-team playoff. Ultimately, all of the other commissioners deferred to the Big Ten and the SEC. And Jim Delaney in the SEC and Tony Petitti in the Big Ten could not agree. And for the first time, I'm going to back the SEC. Tony Petitti wouldn't agree to a 16-team playoff unless Jim Delaney agreed to go to 24 teams in 3 years. Like, this is just a stopping point. We're not going to stay at 16. We know now Tony Petitti believed that this is not the right thing for the sport. And hey, I get it. 24 teams means more money, more entrants. He's looking at the March Madness tournament and thinking, what's a couple more games? It's a lot more dollars. Why wouldn't we do this? College football doesn't need 24 teams playing for a national championship. That's crazy. We do need 16. We've got to go past this 12. And so, one, I was just disappointed that after all of this discussion, we're still at 12 when they could have made a change here. And the other just side annoyance is that this now puts into effect the deal that Pete Bavacqua did on behalf of Notre Dame with the playoff committee, where Notre Dame, if they get a top 12 committee ranking at the end of next year, gets an auto bid into the playoffs, which I just think, I was the first person to say Notre Dame should have gotten in over Miami. And even after everything Miami did, all that says to me is that Notre Dame could have done the same thing and that we should have 16 teams in the playoffs. But Notre Dame should not play by different rules. That's ridiculous. If they want the same opportunity to play in a playoff, then go join a conference fully. Every other varsity sport at Notre Dame plays in the ACC. Why shouldn't their football team too? Come on.
This is going to be a tough one because I'm anti-12 team, and I think that the biggest expansion it should have ever been was 6.
Really?
We don't need 12 teams. We don't need Oregon, James Madison again, right? Like those kinds of matchups, giving these bigger or these smaller outside teams.
Now, I think we should do
large
12
bid.
differently.
I just, if anything, 12 differently, but I just think that we're already losing such quality games. And now some of the games were highly competitive, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were quality games of football. And to me, that's why you don't necessarily need to go any deeper than 6 teams. Maybe that changes now with the transfer portal because, some of those top teams aren't as deep as they used to be and there's a higher spread of talent. But I was already anti-12. I'm certainly anti-16. I don't think that you need to play more games to figure out who the champion is. I think you're diminishing the greatness of how great some of these teams are by adding more games and making things more difficult, right? Again, Oregon having to travel all the way to Miami to play that game. I think travel is a big part of it. And you start stacking that up through the course of the season. Some schools are still in their semester or they're in their quarter, out of their quarter. Like, I just think that there's so many other factors once you start getting into that latter half of the playoff that just, goes completely unchecked and unnoticed. And I know that this is no longer an amateur sport. It really is a paid sport, but goodness gracious. No doubt Notre Dame needs to play by the same rules as everybody. I think they need to get into a conference, join the Big 12 if you're scared of everybody else, but you got to do something. Or I'm sorry, not the Big 12, the ACC, whatever it is. I mean, good. Yeah, I have such a tough time thinking that you need more teams to figure out who your national champion is.
I think I would have agreed with you 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But in this transfer portal and NIL era where talent is spread more evenly across the country than it ever has been before, I just don't think in a lot of years that there's going to be a lot of separation between the first team that we think the best team in the country and the 8th best team, or in this case, the 10th best team in Miami. Or in my case, I thought they were the 13th best team in Miami.
Right. And again, like once you start getting into it's one game to go on, it gets entirely different, right? Because it should be about your entire body of work. And I'm sorry, Miami, you did not even win your conference championship. You sat on the sidelines while your conference championship was being played, not like the University of Oregon, right, where you're just on the outside looking in, but you had a great season. Otherwise, like you lost 3 games this year? Like, you do not deserve to be in the college football playoff if you've lost 3 games. Again, shout out to them for getting some things together, and they got better towards the end of the year. But if you lose 3 games, you're out. You're done. You're not in your conference championship. I don't think there's an excuse to put you in the college football playoff. And so that's where I'm getting frustrated, is it should be a season of your whole body of work that earns you the right to be in the college football playoff and then play for that national championship. Yeah. And expanding it to 16 teams, it just makes losses not matter. I mean, now
So I look at it the other way.
I could play Ohio State in the shoe, not really like the matchup. I'm gonna sit a few guys
So you like the way it
because I
used to
could
be where
if
one loss would knock your season out entirely?
no, well, one loss with 12 or 6 teams doesn't entirely trash your season. It
True.
makes it more difficult, but 3 losses should absolutely be a nail in the coffin.
That's fair.
I don't get why that's controversial.
That's fair. And in a
Again,
16-team playoff,
right, you
you're
go to
going to have
16
three lost teams.
exactly, and if you go to 16 teams and I'm University of Oregon, I gotta travel to the shoe, my team's a little bit banged up, why not rest some guys?
Yeah.
Because I know that that's not gonna hurt me.
Yeah, I mean, hey, they do it in the NBA. You know, you don't have to look far to see what
Load
happens
management,
when.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, outside
Okay,
of the anyways.
so I want to. This is a good segue into the next part of the conversation, which is the business of this sport, and to catch you up on the Darian Mensah saga. It's come to a close. Darian Mensah is off to Miami, where he is going to be the successor to Carson Beck. And just for everybody's quick edification, Darian Mensah started his career at Tulane. He played well enough at Tulane that Duke reached out to him and said, "We want to do a 2-year NIL deal with you." But it's very critical. This is an NIL deal. What they contracted for were his name, image, and likeness. It didn't say anywhere, "We're paying you to play football," because that's how these deals are. But, of course, that was the expectation. They were giving him this money, very good money, between $3 and $4 million a year, which at the time was top of the market. Isn't this year, when there are rumors that, Ty Simpson was offered $6.5 million to go to Miami before they ended up landing Mensah. But, Mensah is on a 2-year deal, and then Miami comes calling, and he announces very abruptly, like DeMond Williams did just before him, that he was entering the portal, he was out. And of course, Miami then steps in and says, "No, we're going to sue you." They file for an injunction. The judge immediately says, "I will rule on whether he can play somewhere else, but I'm not going to stop him from transferring. He has to enter the portal by a certain day." And at that point, it was like, look, he's gone. He's left Duke. And from a legal perspective, when you get into a legal disagreement like this, it results in one of two ways when somebody wins. Either both parties settle and walk away, or one party wins. And the party that wins either gets specific remuneration or they get money. And specific remuneration means they get things kind of brought back together. But the judge is never going to do that in a case where one party doesn't want to come back together with the other. And they say, look, unless you can show that there's no amount of money that will solve this, like that's what the solution is going to be. And of course, here, the two sides came together. They came to a settlement. Who knows what Darian Mensah had to pay back to Duke, maybe even a little bit more. Of course, that didn't come out of his pocket. That came out of a Miami booster's pocket. And Darian Mensah's off. And the moral of this story is, it's really twofold. One, contract language matters. And in this case, the type of contract that they're doing is not an employment agreement. They can't be held to the same employment law principles that everybody else is held to, because it's not that deal. And for that to become the case, they would need to collectively bargain and create a union and do all those things that every other professional sport does.
Right.
And it seems like maybe we're going in that direction. But the other side of it is, the other big learning, unless and until there is some kind of collective bargaining movement, this is the wild, wild west, and nobody has to stay anywhere. You saw Dabo Swinney totally flame out Pete Golding at Ole Miss for stealing away a guy that he signed away from Cal at the last moment of the portal and doubling his offer. And Dabo was pissed. I'd never seen a coach come out and publicly just raise to the ground another school and another coaching staff. But that's what he did, because that's the world we're living in. And all the other players in the country, all that they got out of this was, I can go wherever I want as long as I enter the portal before it shuts. There are no ramifications.
No ramifications. I think this only applies to very few athletes, right? There's a lot of guys that you try to enter the portal in that way. It's probably not going to work just because you don't have that many guys calling. But because there is such a premium on the quarterback position, and not just quarterback, but experienced quarterbacks, teams no longer
They got his top
to,
wide receiver too.
Right. Oh, I didn't even know he came with.
Who was one of the best wide receivers in the country. I mean, it was a 2-for-1.
But yeah, the thing is you don't want to take the risk on the freshman that you had on your roster. He looked decent in practice when you can go get a guy that's proven that he can play at a really high level, at the highest level, right? And again, when coaches' jobs rely so heavily on quarterback play, moving the offense, especially in college football, what are you going to do? Right. So I think that this applies specifically to quarterbacks and maybe a few other defensive linemen, offensive tackle type players that are really, really making an impact at the college football level. But regardless, the poaching of players and moving of players, like all you're doing if you're Tulane or you're Duke or you're not one of the top echelon programs, is you're just paying to develop a future national champion. That's
For the
all you're
most part,
doing.
yeah. It's going to be really
That's all you're
interesting to see
doing.
how that plays out because are they going to play ball in that model, right? I think eventually these non-top tier schools are going to get sick of that.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to continue to see this trend of quarterbacks who are winning the college football playoff, they're at their second or third school.
Yeah,
And whether that's, FBS, whether that's FBS to FBS or whether that's FCS to FBS or D1, D2, whatever the case may be, you're going to continue to see these multi-stop guys who are the ones that are getting over the hump because they're getting developed at these lower tier programs where more is required of you, and then they're getting bought out to go and shine with all the weapons that they never had.
totally. Let's talk a little bit more about development, actually, because another story that did come out from the NCAA is that they are extending the redshirt limit to 9 games. So if you play less than 9 games now, you can still preserve your redshirt. And I can understand in an old world where you had a player for 3 years essentially before they could go off to the pros if they were good enough, and you had them for 4 years before they could be a graduate transfer and go somewhere and play right away. So redshirts made sense. But at 9 games, like you played, I didn't play. But I don't really understand that. Why not just give everybody a 5th year of eligibility at that point? It's like
It's insane.
almost the whole year.
And the red shirt really mattered because there was transfer rules, or there were transfer rules,
Right.
right? Like if you went, you
You
had to
could
sit
use
out a
that.
year in most cases, and you had to burn a red shirt, or for injury related purposes, you could get medical red shirts. But now you can just ask the NCAA, and they grant you, they grant you another year of eligibility no matter what. And so, yeah, 9 games is basically a season, right?
Yeah.
That's your conference schedule right there. And so if you have a guy that doesn't play in the preseason, or not necessarily preseason, but you're out of conference games and he plays the whole conference schedule, or maybe you don't activate, one of your guys until, 6, 7 games in, and then he's right for the playoffs. Like I think it's such a problem because it encourages more guys, in my opinion, to hit the portal. I can get 9 games on film and then have better film to put together and then go hit the portal. Like to me, that's absolutely insane. The whole purpose of a red shirt is for a guy to be able to get a little bit of experience without burning a year of eligibility. 9 games isn't a little bit of experience. That's an entire season.
It
And
is.
I think that's so broken and busted. And like you're saying, it's the NCAA saying, here's another year of eligibility without coming out and actually saying it. So
Yeah, and like let's just be clean about this. This doesn't need to be so complicated. You look at the Trinidad Chambliss situation where it's getting closer and closer to a yes. There, a local Mississippi judge had to intervene, and the kid played 2 years at JUCO. Just give him another year. And frankly, I didn't understand why Diego Pavia didn't seek another year, because if Trinidad Chambliss is going to get it, Diego Pavia would have gotten it too. Poor dude measured out at 5'9" on his pro day. And I know he has all the confidence in the world that he's going to go on to play professional football, but I don't think he's going to play it at the quarterback position. And, as a 7th round or undrafted quarterback, he's going to make nothing. If he would have come back to Vanderbilt or gone to some other school, he could have made $4 or $5 million this year. Like that wasn't worth an extra year of eligibility. And when he was asked about it, he just said that his team this year was too great. There could never be another college team as great as the one that he played on, so he's moving on to the NFL. That didn't make any sense to me. I think the
I don't.
NCAA should just give everybody 5 years of eligibility, play your 5 years, and then see what you can do from there.
I don't think he was wrong though, Diego Pavia, about that being the best Vanderbilt team that there's going to be.
Agreed.
So if he goes back, it wouldn't have been at Vanderbilt. I'm not sure what school it would have been at, but I think his draft stock only could have gotten worse.
I mean, his draft stock is nothing right now. I don't know how it could have gotten worse. I think it only could have gotten better.
Right, but you get to exit as a Heisman candidate, and maybe
True.
now because of that, you get to be a third round guy. I see him, somebody taking a shot on him in the third or fourth round. Now, would you have made more money in school? Yeah, absolutely.
And not just a
But
little more
now,
money, a lot more money,
a lot,
a lot, lot,
a
lot more
lot more
money.
money. But yeah, now you get the chance to be on an NFL roster, and I think that
Maybe.
people overestimate that. I know his recent antics have kind of given people or put a bad taste in his mouth, but say what you want, he's got talent and he's a guy that has moxie out there on the field, and I think that counts for something.
Fair, fair. All right, Nate. Last thing, I want to talk about the NBA a little bit. I know you're a bit of a casual NBA fan. I would say my NBA fandom ramps up throughout the year. You know, during the football season, I watch a little bit of NBA. As we get into Christmas, I start leaning in a little bit more. I've got NBA League Pass, so I like to bounce around and watch a lot of different games. And I've been watching a lot of NBA lately, and I'll tell you, it reminds me of the late 2000s, where the Eastern Conference feels like the AAA conference, and then the Western Conference feels like the major leagues. We've got the Thunder, who are completely dominant. They remind me of the 2000s Lakers. We've got the Spurs, who actually kind of remind me of the Spurs. The Nuggets are super strong. You even have the Phoenix Suns are playing great basketball. I think back to the Steve Nash 7 seconds and less Suns. This is an incredibly packed Western Conference, and I'm here for it because I'm a Blazer fan, but I just want to watch a lot of competitive basketball. And it feels like, especially in the Western Conference, there's a lot of quality. You know, what have you seen in the basketball that you've watched so far this year?
Yeah, I think what you're starting to see is teams settling into more role-based basketball than, hey, here's your superstar, go and win. I think LeBron leaving the East was one of the last times that you're going to truly see a team, at least for the next couple of years, really go that full superstar build around him route. I think we saw a lot of teams that had that James Harden focus, your Kevin Durant focus, Steph Curry focus, even though they had a little bit stronger, setup around them. LeBron James focus, Joel Embiid only focus isn't happening. Like teams are starting to figure out, okay, what we actually need to do is build a quality roster of bigs. These rosters are getting bigger again. Everyone's trying to go small ball, keep up with the Warriors. Yep. You're starting to see that center position come back. And again, just rosters where you truly have role players that are filling out, but everyone has to do a little bit more. It's not like the whole 3-and-D guy, that whole role is dying. Like you got to be able to do it all right now at any and every of the guard positions, and especially your small forward position. Yeah, and so I think we're just seeing a little bit of a swing in number one draft picks and choices. Like that the bottom of the Western Conference was so bad for such a long time. And those draft picks are starting to accumulate. You're starting to see some guys start to blossom over a couple of years. And again, the Eastern Conference, like Giannis got old really, really fast. Joel Embiid doesn't stay healthy. The New York Knicks run themselves into the ground every year, and they don't have a true.
And they fired Tom Thibodeau, and this year has not gone as well. That was kind of an interesting move because he had really rebuilt that franchise.
Exactly, and the teams that you see that are doing well, you've got the veteran Celtics, but are still young, right? Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, like those guys are young for all intents and purposes. Peyton Pritchard, pride of the Northwest, right? The Pistons with Cade Cunningham, right? Kind of a younger team. Cavaliers are starting to get a little bit older with Donovan Mitchell, but still kind of one of those younger teams that play with a lot of energy.
Mobley is still young.
Magic with Paolo Banchero is a team to watch out for.
Although he has not been good this year.
Yeah, there's still time. Kick it up after the All-Star break. Yeah. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is you're right. That Western Conference is so stacked with the elite players right now, and I think elite coaches as well. And I think you're starting to see that play out this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, as a Blazer fan, it's been a fun year because they're one of the top 3-point shooting teams. Obviously, it started in a little bit of a bumpy fashion when Chauncey Billups got caught up in Operation Royal Flush. They had to go to Tiago Splitter as the interim coach. But when I look at the Eastern Conference and I think about a healthy Blazers roster, like 76ers can beat them, Cavs can beat them, Raptors can beat them, Celtics can beat them. The Eastern Conference is a lot less scary to me. When I look at the Western Conference, I think the Blazers can beat the Lakers, the Timberwolves, the Suns, the aging Warriors. But I don't think the Blazers are ready to compete with the top 3 in the Western Conference. The Thunder and the Spurs are obviously right now, kind of a head higher than everybody else. But, Denver's doing what Denver's doing without Jokic. And when he comes back, they're going to be scary. But yep. I'm really excited to see what happens down the stretch as these teams, start to kind of sort out their position. And especially as we get to the trade deadline, the NBA tends to have the best trade deadline. And right now, the top prize on the market is Giannis. And if Giannis comes to the Western Conference, like there are whispers that Giannis could end up with the Warriors. That would be crazy, that Giannis could end up with the Rockets. I don't know what the Rockets would have to do. They'd have to part with a lot of talent for that. Mm-hmm. But, that could really shake some things up.
Yeah, Houston would have to mortgage the future that they've just started building. with the guys on their team. You're probably looking at giving up Sangoon. You're probably looking at giving up. I can't remember if it's Amin or Asar Thompson, whichever one of the twins is on that Rockets team. Um, the Warriors, now you're just building a whole entire retirement home. I'm not sure how that's going to work
That's
out.
right.
Who's left on that team by the end of the year? Who's not going to have some sort of really just season ending or at least multi weeks out injuries? I don't know who else in the Western Conference is really looking for Giannis, but I mean, you'd certainly take him. I think the Timberwolves would be an interesting fit. I don't think that they necessarily have the chops to go land him. Clippers could be interesting. Grizzlies would be interesting, but yeah, the big deal is who wants to take a Giannis who you're not really sure how healthy he is or isn't, and he hasn't necessarily been healthy for the past several years, and so you're gonna go out there, you're gonna pay a boatload of money for him or a boatload of assets for him, but what are you gonna actually get back? It's got to be a win now move, and you got to hope that he stays healthy.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be a mortgage. Excited to see where he goes. Nate, can't thank you enough for the time. It's been great chatting through all these topics today. I'm so glad that you're back stateside. You had a great time. Hopefully my voice gets a little bit better between this week and next week, but let's do it again.
Hey, man, thanks for hanging with the brain. I felt like it was working at 75% loading capacity today. So what a time to be alive. We'll be back.
All right, see y'all. Appreciate you.
See ya.